The email that changed everything. The morning began like any other. Sundar Pichai sat at his long wooden kitchen table, sunlight spilling across the surface, the smell of fresh chai filling the air. He scrolled through his emails with one hand, while the other stirred his cup, absently. There were meetings to prepare for, strategy documents to review, and yet his eyes stopped on one strange subject line buried deep in his inbox. You don't know me, but I know you. And I know what you're trying to hide. His first instinct was to laugh. There were always phishing scams, hoaxes, people pretending to know secrets that didn't exist. But something about this email felt different. The grammar was perfect. The tone was calm, even polite. He opened it. Mr. Pichai, I admire you greatly, which is why I'm warning you. Tomorrow night, everything you built will collapse. Unless you agree to meet me in person, and only you can stop what is coming. Only you. Sundar frowned. There was no name, just a single line at the bottom. If you ignore this, the world will know you could have prevented the fall of Tesla. He read it again and again, his heart pounding now. Tesla. Why would someone write to him about Tesla? He wasn't Elon Musk. He didn't run Tesla. Sure, he respected the company, even partnered with them on some AI projects. But this made no sense. He replied quickly, his fingers steady despite the strange feeling in his stomach. Who are you? What do you mean by follow Tesla? Explain. Minutes passed. No reply. He closed the laptop and tried to shake it off. But the words kept echoing in his mind all through the day. By afternoon, a message pinged on his private phone. Check your email again, but not your work email. The personal one you never use anymore. His breath caught. How did they know about his old personal email? He hadn't touched it in years. With trembling hands, he logged in, and there it was. A new message. Thank you for listening. Meet me at Pier 14 in San Francisco, tomorrow night, midnight. Come alone. Bring nothing. If you tell anyone, Tesla falls and so do you. He sat back in his chair, staring at the words. Part of him wanted to delete it all and walk away. He wasn't responsible for Tesla. But then, again, if this was real, if something terrible was about to happen, could he live with himself if he did nothing? That night, sleep did not come. He kept picturing the face of Elon, his employees, the engineers who worked day and night to build something meaningful. And then he saw ordinary people, families, drivers, everyone who depended on the technology. He knew he couldn't ignore it. The next evening, he told his assistant he was taking a personal day. He left his phone at home, just as instructed. As the sun dipped low over San Francisco, he walked alone toward Pier 14. The bay breeze was sharp, biting through his jacket. The city lights shimmered across the water, and gulls wheeled above him. At first, the pier seemed deserted. He stood there, hands in his pockets, waiting. And then he heard a faint clicking sound. Footsteps, measured and slow. Out of the shadows emerged a tall figure in a black coat. A hood pulled low. The figure stopped a few feet away. Mr. Pichai. The voice was soft, almost kind. Thank you for coming. Most people wouldn't have. But I knew you would. Sundar stared. Who are you? What is this about? The figure laughed quietly. Who I am doesn't matter. What I know does. Then the figure pulled out a small tablet and held it up. On the screen was a live feed of Tesla's main server room. Lines of code scrolled by, faster than Sundar could read. But one phrase flashed repeatedly in red. Destruction protocol initiated, 22 hours remaining. I designed this. The figure said, softly, the most sophisticated virus ever written. In less than a day, it will erase everything Tesla has ever built. Their designs, their patents, their research, all gone. And no one can stop it, except you. Sundar felt his knees go weak. His voice cracked. Why would you do this? Why me? The figure tilted its head, almost sadly. Because you still believe people can change, and I want to believe that too. Sundar took a deep breath. Tell me what you want. The figure smiled faintly. That's the question, isn't it? Tomorrow, at this time, you'll have your answer. But tonight you have to decide whether you're willing to listen. Then Before Sundar could say another word, the figure turned and vanished into the darkness. Sundar stood alone on the pier, the tablet still glowing in his hands, showing the countdown. 21 hours, 59 minutes, 43 seconds. And as he stared at the screen, he realized something chilling. The name of the virus was written there in small, cold letters. Sundar's choice. He looked up into the empty night, the waves crashing below, and whispered to himself, "What have I gotten myself into?" But no answer came. Only the relentless ticking of time. Asterisk, the hacker's truth. Clock kept ticking, even as Sundar stood frozen on the pier. The tablet heavy in his hands, its glow casting an eerie light on his face. He kept staring at the words Sundar's choice, flashing on the screen, feeling an uncomfortable weight pressing down on his chest. The name of the virus was not just unsettling, it was personal. Someone out there had crafted this attack not simply to destroy Tesla, but to draw him, Sundar Pichai, into a strange, twisted game. As the minutes ticked by and the waves lapped against the wooden planks beneath him, he felt both anger and confusion boiling inside him. Who would do this? And why drag him into it? His fingers tightened around the edges of the tablet until his knuckles turned white. He forced himself to turn and walk back down the pier, his mind racing. The streets of San Francisco stretched before him, blurry with fog and scattered lights. His legs moved on instinct, while his thoughts churned like a storm. Every few steps he glanced back over his shoulder, half expecting the figure to reappear from the shadows. But no one came. When he reached a quiet corner near an empty park bench, he sat down and set the tablet on his lap. The timer was still counting down, second by second, merciless and precise. He tried tapping the screen, exploring the menus, but everything was locked. It was nothing but a live feed of Tesla's server room with the countdown running at the bottom and a single locked folder labeled answers. His breath fogged in the cold night air as he thought about what to do next. Calling the authorities crossed his mind, but the hacker's warning echoed in his head, "Bring nothing, tell no one." And besides, this person clearly had resources, knowledge, and skill far beyond ordinary hackers. If they could infiltrate his private email, track his location, and plant a virus inside Tesla's fortified systems, then who knew what else they could do? Reluctantly, he realized he had no choice but to play along. The next morning, he arrived at Google headquarters earlier than usual, still wearing the same jacket from the night before. He slipped through the halls with his head down, avoiding eye contact, carrying the tablet in his bag like a hidden bomb. He locked himself in a quiet conference room and opened the tablet again. The countdown had dipped below 18 hours now. He stared at it as if hoping it might stop on its own, but the seconds just kept falling away. Igabalan? USK? He thought about the engineers and their families, the thousands of workers whose lives would be thrown into chaos if Tesla's secrets were wiped clean. A part of him burned with frustration. Why should he carry this burden? This wasn't his company. But another part of him, deeper and quieter, whispered that it didn't matter. Someone needed to stop this, and for whatever reason, the hacker had chosen him. As he sat there, lost in thought, the tablet suddenly beeped. A new message appeared on the screen. "Good morning, Mr. Pichai. I hope you slept well. If you're ready to understand, meet me tonight at 11. Same place. This time you'll hear the truth. And when you do, everything you believe about yourself will change." He stared at the message for a long time. Everything about himself? What could that possibly mean? The day crawled by slowly. He went through meetings, nodded at presentations, answered questions automatically, but his mind was elsewhere. Every sound, every flicker of light in the corner of his vision made him jump. He felt the weight of the hacker's words pressing down heavier with each passing minute. Humility had always been his strength, but now he felt uncomfortably exposed, like the whole world was staring through him. He wondered how the hacker had learned so much about him. Who were they? A former colleague? A bitter rival? A betrayed friend? Or worse, someone from his past he couldn't even remember. By the time the sun set, He could feel his chest tightening with nervous energy. When 11 finally approached, he left the office quietly, slipped into the foggy streets, and made his way back to Pier 14. The air was even colder than the night before, the moon hidden behind thick clouds. The water below was dark and restless, slapping the posts of the pier with hollow sounds that echoed into the silence. This time, the figure was already waiting. They stood near the edge of the pier, their coat flapping slightly in the breeze, their hood low over their face. Sundar walked up slowly, his footsteps loud on the wooden boards. "You came?" the figure said softly, without turning around. "I don't have a choice," Sundar replied, his voice low but steady. "What do you want from me?" The figure chuckled quietly and finally turned to face him. Under the hood, Sundar could see only part of a face, a sharp jawline, a faint scar running. Across one cheek, eyes that glinted with a strange mix of sadness and something colder. Asterisk. "Not yet," the figure said. "Tonight, I tell you why. Tomorrow, you decide what to do about it." They gestured for Sundar to follow, and together they walked down the pier toward the farthest corner, away from the faint glow of the streetlights. Once there, the figure pulled a folded photograph from inside their coat and handed it to him. Sundar took it and stared. It showed a small boy, maybe 8 years old, sitting at a dusty desk in a dimly lit room. His face was thin, his eyes bright, and full of quiet determination. There was something hauntingly familiar about the boy. Sundar frowned, confused. "Look closer," the figure whispered and then it hit him. It was himself as a boy, back in Chennai, sitting at the cracked wooden desk his father had built, studying by the faint light of a single bulb. He remembered the photograph, now his. Mother had taken it one evening when he was doing homework. But how did the hacker have it? He looked up, his hands trembling slightly. "How do you have this?" The figure's lips curled into a faint, sad smile. "Because everything starts here. Everything ends here. You're not just the CEO of a company, Mr. Pichai. You are the seed of an idea, planted long ago in that little boy's heart. And I am the shadow of what that idea became." Sundar shook, his head, his mind spinning. "I don't understand. What does this have to do with Tesla? What does this have to do with me?" The figure stepped closer, and for the first time, Sundar could see the pain etched into their face. "Because, Sundar, everything you built, I helped build too. And everything I lost, you gained. You rose. I fell. You became the face of progress, and I became the forgotten ghost. This virus, it's not just revenge on Tesla. It's proof that even the best of us can be brought to our knees." The words sank into Sundar like stones dropped in water, each one heavier than the last. He searched the figure's eyes for some sign of recognition, some clue to who they were. And then, as the figure lowered the hood, Sundar's breath caught. In his throat, he knew that face. The hacker was someone he had known long ago. Someone he had admired. Someone who had been his closest friend back in Chennai before the scholarships. Before the opportunities, before the world had opened up for one of them and slammed shut for the other. The boy in the photo and the man before him now were two parts of the same story. Sundar swallowed hard, his voice barely a whisper. "It's you." The figure's eyes glistened, but their smile was sharp and cold. "Yes, Sundar. It's me. And now you understand why this is your choice. Save them. Or save yourself. You cannot do both." Then they stepped back, letting the hood fall again over their face, and disappeared into the darkness, leaving Sundar standing alone with the photograph in one hand and the tablet in the other. He stood there for a long time, the fog thickening. Around him, the water below crashing louder than before. The weight of the choice pressed down harder than ever. And in the distance, the faint numbers on the tablet kept counting down. 12 hours, 14 minutes, 39 seconds, and for the first time in years, Sundar felt truly powerless. Asterisk, the impossible choice of walk back to his hotel felt longer than the whole day. Sundar moved through the foggy streets like a ghost, the photograph of his childhood friend, clutched tightly in one hand, the tablet glowing faintly from inside his jacket pocket. The air was heavy with mist, and the distant sound of horns from the bay seemed to echo his thoughts low and mournful. He could feel the weight of what had just happened settling into his chest, pressing harder with every step. He had come here thinking he would meet a stranger, a nameless hacker who wanted to play a cruel game. But now he knew the truth, and it was so much worse. The hacker was not a stranger. He was a boy Sundar once knew, a boy who had sat next to him every day in school, who had shared his lunch, who had dreamed with him about what the future could be. That boy's name was Arjun. He hadn't heard that name in decades. But hearing it again on the hacker's lips had opened a flood of memories that Sundar had long buried. He remembered sitting with Arjun under the big tamarind tree outside the schoolyard, trading math problems and stories. He remembered how Arjun's father worked as a mechanic and how his mother sold flowers by the roadside. He remembered how they both dreamed of leaving Chennai, of doing something great, of changing the world. And he remembered the day he got his scholarship to America, how he had packed his bags and left without looking back, telling himself that someday he would come home and help everyone he left behind, but he never did. And now Arjun had come to find him, not as a friend, but as a shadow of the boy he used to be, hurt, bitter and dangerous. Sundar could not stop thinking about the way Arjun had looked at him on the pier, his eyes sharp with pain and something colder, like disappointment that had curdled into vengeance. He kept replaying the words in his head, "Save them or save yourself. You cannot do both." The hotel room was quiet and cold when he arrived. He closed the door behind him, dropped his jacket on the chair, and sat at the small desk. He placed the photograph of young Arjun next to the tablet, which still displayed the relentless countdown. He stared at the screen as the seconds fell. Away, 11 hours, 28 minutes, 16 seconds. The numbers glowed in the darkness like the eyes of some silent creature watching him. Waiting for him to make his move, he leaned back and covered his face with his hands, spiraling. He knew he had to choose, but he didn't even understand what the choice meant yet. Save them or save yourself? If he saved Tesla, what would it cost him? And if he chose himself, what would happen to all those people who depended on the company? The technology? The dream? He had always believed that kindness and humility could solve anything. But now he felt those virtues slipping through his fingers, replaced by fear and doubt. When the tablet beeped again, he jumped. A new message appeared. Simple and chilling. Midnight. Pier 14. Final instructions. Bring nothing but your decision. He read it over and over, hoping it would somehow explain more, but that was all it said. Just his decision. He spent the rest of the night pacing the room, staring out the window at the foggy city below. He thought about Tesla's workers, about the engineers and scientists who had poured their lives into building something they believed in. He thought about Arjun, about the boy who had shared his hopes and his hunger for a better future, and how that boy had become this broken man. And he thought about himself, about the path he had chosen, the people he had left behind, and the quiet guilt he had carried all these years without realizing how heavy it truly was. By the time he left the hotel again, his legs felt heavy, his eyes burning from lack of sleep. The streets were nearly empty at this hour, the fog thicker than ever. He moved toward Pier 14 like a man walking into a dream, or a nightmare. Arjun was waiting for him at the end of the pier, his hood down this time, his face illuminated by the faint glow of a lantern at his feet. There was no smile on his lips now, just a deep, tired sadness that made him look older than Sundar remembered. You came, Arjun said quietly. I came, Sundar replied, his voice flat, stripped of any pretense. Arjun nodded slowly. Then you're ready to understand? He reached into his coat and pulled out a second tablet, identical to the one Sundar already carried. He set it down on the railing of the pier between them. There are two options, Arjun began, his tone calm but unyielding. One key wipes the virus from Tesla's servers completely. They survive. Everything continues as it was. But that key comes at a cost. Everything about your own legacy, every secret you've buried to protect yourself, every questionable decision you've made to rise where you are. I release all of it to the world. No more hiding. He gestured to the second key on the screen, his finger lingering there. The other key does the opposite. The virus completes its work. Tesla burns to the ground, but you stay clean, untouchable. No one will ever know what you chose. No one will ever know what you really are. Sundar's hands clenched into fists. His voice shook when he finally spoke. So, it's me or them? Asterisk, yes, Arjun simply. Just as it always was. The word stung more than Sundar expected. Just as it always was. The boy who had once been his friend was telling him that nothing had changed, that deep down, he had always chosen himself first. Sundar stared at the two glowing keys on the screen, each one shining faintly like a quiet promise of ruin. He thought about what it would mean if the world saw him for who he really was, not just the polished CEO. The kind leader, but the flawed man who had hurt people without even realizing it. But then he thought about the workers at Tesla, the engineers, and the dreamers who didn't deserve to pay for his sins. Why are you doing this? He asked finally, his voice almost breaking. Arjun's eyes softened just slightly, though his jaw remained tight, because I needed you to feel it. The weight, the choices, the way it feels when you're the one who gets left behind. There was silence between them for a long time. The fog swirled around their feet, the waves below crashing louder now, as though even the ocean was holding its breath. Sundar looked at the two keys again, his hand hovering over them. The seconds on the timer were falling faster now. 9 hours. 53 minutes. 10 seconds. Asterisk. And if I don't choose? He asked quietly. Arjun's lips curled into something that wasn't quite a smile. Then they both burned. You, them, everyone. Sundar closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the cold wind on his face, the memory of the little boy at the cracked wooden desk still burning in his mind. He opened his eyes again and reached out slowly. But before his fingers could touch either key, Arjun spoke again, softer this time, almost a whisper. Do you even remember what we promised each other under that tree, Sundar? Do you remember what we swore we would never become? The question cut deeper than anything else. And in that moment, Sundar's hand stopped. His breath caught in his chest. I remember, he whispered. Arjun stepped back then, his eyes glinting in the faint light, waiting. The choice hung heavy in the air between them, and the only sound was the relentless ticking of the timer. And then, before Sundar could move, the tablet beeped sharply, louder than before, and a third key appeared on the screen. Neither of them had touched anything. Both men froze, staring at the screen as the third option blinked into life, its label simple but chilling. Sacrifice. Sundar swallowed hard. What is this? But Arjun just stared at the screen, his face pale now, the color draining from it as though he himself didn't know. I didn't. He started, but his voice faltered. The third key glowed brighter than the others, its label pulsing slowly. Like a heartbeat. What does it mean? Sundar asked again, louder this time, his own voice cracking under the weight of the question. But before Arjun could answer, the screen flashed red, and the words changed again. One who does not leave. His peer alive. Both men froze, the fog thick around them now, the sound of the ocean growing louder, closer, almost deafening. The tablet beeped once more, and the countdown resumed, faster than before. The seconds bleeding away like water through cupped hands, and in that frozen moment, Sundar looked at Arjun, and Arjun looked at him, and they both understood the truth. The choice was no longer just about Tesla. It was about which of them would walk away. Asterisk, the sacrifice. Its glow of the tablet was the only light on the pier now. Its harsh red letters burning into Sundar's eyes as though they had been written into the fog itself. The words stayed fixed on the screen, unblinking and merciless. One of you does not leave this pier alive. He could feel the sound of his own heartbeat in his ears, loud and uneven, almost drowning out the crash of the waves below. The wind had picked up, whipping through his hair and tugging at his jacket, but he barely noticed. His eyes stayed locked on the screen, unwilling to move. Arjun stood on the other side of the tablet, his face pale, his breathing sharp and fast. His hood had fallen back, and in the dim light, Sundar could see the boy he used to know still hiding somewhere in those angry eyes. But now there was something else there too, something like fear, something like regret. I didn't do this, Arjun finally said, his voice unsteady. This wasn't me, I swear. Sundar tore his gaze from the screen and stared at him, trying to read the truth in his face. It was hard to believe anything anymore. Every word. Between them felt like a knife, every silence worse than a wound. Then who? Sundar asked, his voice quiet but heavy. Who else could have done this? Arjun's jaw clenched as he looked back at the screen. His hands flexed at his sides, restless and tight. For the first time since this began, Sundar saw the faintest crack in Arjun's confidence. He looked smaller, somehow less like a man in control and more like a man who had been caught in his own trap. There's another layer, Arjun admitted, his words barely audible over the wind. A failsafe, something I built into the code, but I never thought it would activate. I didn't even think it worked. It was just a thought, a way to make sure you couldn't walk away without feeling it. But this is more than I planned. Sundar's hands gripped the railing of the pier as he took in the words. His mind was spinning, trying to understand, trying to make sense of a choice that made no sense. Sacrifice. One of them would not leave alive. But which one? And what did alive even mean anymore? You built this, Sundar said, his voice low and steady despite the fear rising in his chest. You built this knowing it could come to this? Arjun flinched, his shoulders stiffening. I built it because of you. Because you left and forgot me. Because I wanted you to feel what it's like to be invisible, to be the one left behind. The words hung between them like ice in the air. Sundar closed his eyes for a moment, feeling their weight. He opened them again and looked directly at Arjun. And if one of us has to die to stop this, is that what you wanted to? Arjun didn't answer. He just stared back, his expression twisted with something Sundar couldn't name. Then the tablet beeped again. A new line appeared on the screen beneath the first. Sacrifice must be voluntary. One of you chooses. The other survives. Tesla is spared. The red numbers of the countdown had begun to accelerate now, every second louder than the last. 8 hours, 27 minutes, 30 seconds. Sundar's chest tightened as he read the words. The choice had sharpened into something crueler, something raw. It was not just about pride or legacy anymore. It was about life, about blood, about which of them was willing to give up everything so the other could walk away. Arjun stepped closer, his breath visible in the cold air. His voice was low but clear. Maybe this is what we both deserve, he said. Maybe this is the only way to make it right. Sundar shook his head slowly, his own voice trembling despite his effort to keep it firm. You don't know what you're saying. You don't know what this means, don't I? Arjun shot back, his tone sharp, brittle with anger. I've been living this choice for 20 years, Sundar, every single day. You just didn't see it. Sundar looked at him and for a moment saw not the bitter man standing before him, but the boy who used to sit under the tamarind tree with him, dreaming about the stars. His throat tightened painfully. Then let me be the one, Sundar said finally. The words barely above a whisper. Arjun froze. His eyes widened slightly, the anger faltering into something else, something closer to disbelief. You? He asked, his voice cracking. Sundar nodded once, slowly. You built this? You carried this pain all these years. Maybe it's my turn to carry something. But as he reached toward the screen to press the key, Arjun lunged forward and grabbed his wrist. His grip was firm, his eyes fierce now, shimmering in the faint light. Don't you dare? Arjun hissed, his voice low and raw. Don't you dare take this from me. This is my punishment. My design, not yours. They stood there, locked. In that moment, each of them unwilling to let go, their breaths coming fast and shallow. The weight of everything they had been and everything they had become pressing down between them. Why are you doing this? Sundar asked, his voice cracking. Now, his composure shattering. Why can't we both walk away? We can fix this together. We can, because it doesn't work that way, Arjun cut in, his own voice breaking now too. You don't understand. You were always the one who walked away clean. You don't know what it's like to drown and keep smiling for everyone else. This was never about Tesla. This was about us. The words hit Sundar like a wave, knocking the breath out of him. He stared at Arjun, seeing the truth in his eyes now. A truth that had been buried for decades, hidden beneath anger and grief and pride. Then let me fix it, Sundar pleaded, his voice quiet but desperate. Please, let me. Arjun's grip tightened on his wrist, his jaw clenched, his whole body trembling with the force of everything he had held inside for so long. No, he whispered, shaking his head. You've done enough. And before Sundar could stop him, Arjun suddenly let go and slammed his own palm onto the glowing key marked sacrifice. The tablet let out a sharp, metallic tone, louder than anything before. The screen went white for a moment, and then a single line appeared. Sacrifice accepted. Process irreversible. Sundar stumbled backward, his heart hammering in his chest as he watched Arjun's shoulders slump, his breath coming in ragged gasps. What did you do? Sundar asked, his voice hoarse. Arjun turned to him slowly, and for the first time there was no anger in his eyes, just quiet sadness, and something that looked almost like peace. I kept my promise, he said softly. One of us had to. But before Sundar could reach him, the tablet beeped one final time, and the screen went dark then. Without warning, Arjun's legs buckled. He dropped to his knees, clutching his chest, his breath sharp and shallow. Arjun, Sundar shouted, rushing forward, catching him before he could fall completely. But Arjun shook his head weakly, his lips curling into a faint smile. Don't waste this, he murmured, his voice barely audible now, his eyes fluttering closed. Sundar held him tightly. The cold wind whipping around them, the sound of the waves rising louder and louder in his ears. He could feel the weight of Arjun's body growing heavier in his arms, the warmth draining away. He looked down at the tablet, still clutched in Arjun's hand, its screen blank and silent now. No, Sundar whispered, his voice breaking. Please. No, but there was no answer. Only the sound of the ocean and the empty, endless fog swallowing them whole. Asterisk. The aftermath sky over San Francisco began to lighten, but it brought no warmth. Dawn broke slowly, smearing the fog with faint streaks of gray and pink, and the sound of gulls crying above the bay felt hollow, distant, meaningless. Sundar sat on the cold wooden planks of Pier 14, his back against the railing, his hands resting on his knees. Arjun's body lay beside him, still and silent, covered by Sundar's own jacket. He had not moved for hours. The tablet lay a few feet away, its screen black, its threat gone, but it offered no comfort. Sundar stared at nothing, his thoughts a jumble of memories and guilt and questions he was afraid to ask. He kept hearing Arjun's last words in his mind. Don't waste this. And each time they came, they hurt a little more at some point during the night. He had checked for a pulse, pressing his fingers gently to Arjun's neck, hoping for some tiny sign of life. But there was nothing. His friend was gone. And yet, something inside Sundar refused to accept it. He kept expecting Arjun to open his eyes, to laugh, to tell him it was another test, another cruel trick. But the silence stretched on and on as the first rays of sunlight cut through the fog. Sundar finally stood, his legs stiff and heavy. He looked out over the water, the waves shimmering faintly in the weak light. He thought about how much had changed since they were boys, how far they had come, and how far they had fallen. When he turned back, the tablet's screen suddenly flickered to life, its glow faint but insistent. Sundar crouched beside it, his breath catching in his chest. A new message scrolled across the screen, the letters sharp and deliberate. Sacrifice confirmed. Tesla secured. Public data release canceled. Final directive in progress. His hands tightened around the edges of the tablet. Final directive. He stared at those words, afraid to touch the screen, afraid of what they might mean. And then, slowly, Another line appeared below the first, each word dropping like a stone into his chest. Thank you for choosing. He swallowed hard, his throat dry, his heart pounding louder now. He didn't remember choosing. It had all happened so fast. The third key, the rush of emotion, Arjun's sudden decision to press it before Sundar could stop him. And yet, somehow, the message made it sound like it had been his choice all along. He reached out with one trembling finger and tapped the screen. Another message blinked into view. Tesla systems fully restored. Countdown terminated. All damage reversed. A wave of relief washed over him, but it was fleeting, almost cruel in how quickly it was swallowed by the heaviness of what remained. Tesla was safe. The workers, the engineers, their families, they would wake this morning and go about their lives, never knowing how close they had come to losing everything. And they would never know the price that had been paid. Sundar looked down at Arjun's still body, and his breath hitched in his chest. He crouched beside him again, pulling the jacket tighter around him as though it could shield him from the morning chill. He wanted to say something, to thank him, to apologize, but the words stuck in his throat. When he stood again, the tablet beeped once more. His hands hesitated before lifting it. The screen now showed a single folder labeled Truth. His thumb hovered over it. He knew whatever was inside would hurt, would dig deeper than anything so far, but he also knew he couldn't turn away now. He tapped the folder open. Inside were dozens of files, names he recognized, decisions he remembered making, moments he had buried deep in the name of progress. Each one documented. Exposed emails where he had ignored pleas from lower-level employees. Memos where he had cut corners to push a deal through. Contracts signed without reading the fine print that harmed people he'd never met. Choices he told himself were necessary, but which, seen now all together, painted a picture of a man who had risen not just through talent and kindness, but through silence, calculation, and compromise. He scrolled through them slowly, his chest tightening with each file. Arjun had kept everything. Every wound Sundar had left behind, every broken promise. He felt the weight of them all now, pressing down like stones, and he wondered how he had never noticed them before. Near the bottom of the folder was one final document. A letter. It was short, written in plain words, but it cut deeper than anything else. Sundar, I didn't hate you at first. I waited for years, thinking you'd come back, that you'd remember me, that you'd keep your promise. But when you didn't, I realized you'd already chosen. You chose yourself? This isn't about punishing you. It's about showing you what that choice feels like from the other side. If you're reading this, it means one of us kept our word after all. Don't waste it. Don't forget me again. Arjun. Sundar closed the tablet and set it gently on the railing. His hands lingered there for a long moment. The bay below was alive with light now, the fog beginning to thin. Boats moved silently in the distance. Life was already returning to the city behind him. He turned back to Arjun and lowered himself to the ground beside him. For the first time in years, he let himself cry, not just for Arjun, but for himself, for the boy he used to be, for the promises they had made and broken under that tamarind tree. When the first footsteps came from the far end of the pier, he wiped his face quickly and stood. Two uniformed officers approached, their expressions cautious but kind. One of them spoke softly. Double quote, sir. Are you all right? We received a call about an incident here last night. Sundar nodded slowly, his voice hoarse when he finally spoke. He's gone, he said simply. But he saved more than you'll ever know. The officers exchanged a glance but didn't press further. One of them gently lifted Arjun's body, while the other stayed behind to ask a few more questions. Sundar answered them quietly, his eyes on the water the whole time. When they left, taking Arjun with them, Sundar stayed behind. He picked up the tablet one last time and slipped it into his jacket. The folder named Truth was still open on the screen, waiting for him. He didn't know what he would do with it yet. He only knew he couldn't let it disappear. Not this time, thought as he turned to leave the pier. His phone buzzed for the first time since yesterday. It was his assistant, her voice bright and cheerful on the other end. Good morning, sir. Just wanted to let you know the Tesla collaboration team has confirmed everything is back online. They even said it's running faster than before. You must have worked some kind of magic. Should I schedule a press statement? Sundar stopped walking and looked down at the fog swirling around his shoes. He thought of Arjun's letter, of the files in the tablet, of the weight of all those years between them. He brought the phone to his ear and spoke softly. No, he said. No statements. Just let it be. Of course, sir, she replied, before hanging up. He slipped the phone back into his pocket and walked slowly off the pier, the fog finally breaking. Above him, revealing the first true rays of sunlight dot, and just as he stepped back onto solid ground, the tablet buzzed one last time in his jacket. When he pulled it out, a new message waited on the screen, in the same calm, familiar font as before. You chose well, but the game isn't over. His breath caught. His fingers tightened on the tablet. Dot below that message was a countdown timer. 72 hours. 0 minutes. 0 seconds. And then the screen went dark again. Asterisk the final choice. Tablet lay heavy in his hands as Sundar stared, the new countdown ticking mercilessly toward 0. 72 hours. Not even a day had passed since Arjun had fallen silent in his arms on the cold pier, and already the shadows of his sacrifice were unraveling. He walked aimlessly through the streets of San Francisco. The noise of the city, around him muted like it all belonged to another world. Horns blared. People hurried past him, eyes fixed on their phones, their lives moving forward without knowing how close they had come to chaos. And somewhere deep inside, Sundar felt the weight of their ignorance like a stone in his chest. He stopped on a quiet corner, leaning against a brick wall as the fog swirled low over the bay. He pulled the tablet out again, half hoping the message had vanished, half fearing it hadn't. But there it was, still waiting for him, the words sharp and cold against the screen. You chose well, but the game isn't over. Below it, a single line blinked faintly, almost like a whisper he could hear in his head. You still owe him. His fingers tightened around the tablet, and he felt the familiar guilt rising again. In the hours since Arjun's death, he had told himself over and over that it was done, that the choice had been made and paid for. But now he understood what he had refused to believe. Arjun's sacrifice was not the end. It was only the beginning. When the sun rose the next morning, Sundar was already on a plane. The seatbelt light blinked above him as the engines roared, but he hardly noticed. His eyes stayed fixed on the tablet resting in his lap, and the quiet pulse of the countdown slipped deeper into his mind with every passing second. He landed in Chennai just as night fell. The air was heavy and warm, thick with the smell of earth and spice. And as he stepped out into the familiar streets of his childhood, a wave of memories crashed into him all at once. He walked past the corner where he and Arjun used to race, each other home from school. He passed the shuttered flower stall where Arjun's mother had once handed him a string of jasmine with a tired smile. He paused outside the old mechanic's shop, now dark and empty, its sign barely hanging by. Single male.